This month on Inquisitive, Your Miracle Resource, the podcast, we discuss who's the lifeguard in your life. Welcome back. This week we're talking about who's the lifeguard in your life. This is in relation to Katherine Miracle's book, Inquisitive Culture, more specifically Chapter 8, Assumption versus Inquisitive. So today we'll be talking about that idea. So we're faced with a problem of employees, whether they have issues going on at work or if they're late to work or they have constant tardiness. And we always have a lot of people ask us, well, what's the best way to approach the situation? So I'll turn it over to Katherine. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because when we did the 12 years of research for the book, we talk about questions. And Sarah, you bring up the best point. To get someone to answer so you get the information you need, you have to ask what's called an inquisitive question. And I want to make sure that everybody knows they've been sending in information to us about, especially during the pandemic, team members are late, team members have a bad attitude about what's happening. We have CEOs that write to us and say, how do I get my team to be brand ambassadors and lifeguards like we promote in Inquisitive Culture and at Miracle Resources? And it really starts with the question. So want to give you the example. When an employee is late, and then, right away, you think the person's going to be asked this question: why are you late? When we ask an inquisitive question, we change it and we take the person away from the problem. So if I say, what's preventing you from making it to work on time, then they feel more comfortable saying, oh, there's traffic. Oh, there's a problem at home. And in this example that we shared in one of our speeches last week, we talked very much about a story that I'd like to tell you. And that is a gentleman, a vice president of a company. I mean, he's a vice president. He's done very well for this company, but all of a sudden he's continually late. And HR saying to me, okay, well, what do you think we should do? And we talked about, how do you get to the core of the real problem? Why is this vice president late all the time? The only thing they knew was he and his wife had had a baby. What they didn't know until they asked the question inquisitively, they asked the question and said, what's preventing you from making it to work on time? Is there anything we can help with? That finally got him to open up. And again, this is after months of, asking the same question, why are you late? And he's like, oh, it won't happen again. So when the question was asked that showed help and it also put him away from the problem, here was his answer. His answer was that they had had a very severely premature baby. And because in the morning they had to get monitors working, and when things didn't work, they had to call the doctor, wait for the doctor to call back. And he didn't want to leave his wife and his newborn daughter. It was also a very scary situation for this young baby who was born very severely premature. Now, because he answered the question and actually said the core of the real problem, HR was able to call the company's insurance company provider and say, hey, we have a situation. One of our vice presidents had a little daughter born severely premature. Is there anything we could do? So it's a monitor that actually the insurance company could get and negotiated for. So this monitor would directly connect to the doctor's office, thus saving the baby. I mean, you want your baby to have that best technological equipment, right? And so this vice president now can make it to work on time, but that's not the most important part of the story. The most important part of this story truly is this baby is safer because an inquisitive question was asked. And now this vice president loves his company. This company had his back. So Sarah, you asked the question, who are the lifeguards in our lives? When we feel our employer has our back, they go to bat for us. They help our family. In this case, saving his daughter. It wasn't just getting him to work on time. It was actually solving a bigger problem. So we feature a lot of times when people write in to me, they'll say, hey, how do I say this? I have to deliver some bad news, or I don't know why someone's doing something. My answer always is, ask the question inquisitively. Take the person away from the problem and get to the core of what's really happening. And again, offer your help after you ask the question. What can I do to help you? then someone opens up. So if you want your employees to be brand ambassadors and lifeguards that will protect the company and listen and observe and take action, the kind of people who will work when they're off duty, how do you get that to happen? Ask them an inquisitive question. So thank you, Sarah. That's a good question.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of using what you call in the book is ear, evaluate, act, ask, and respond. It's a great example of that because instead of just approaching an employee, offering them more of a personal side really helps open up that relationship. And in turn, it'll help everybody. It helps the employee feel valued. It helps that the employer knows what's going on in their own workplace. And in turn, will help everything run smoother.
That's so good you mentioned that, Sarah, because ear, it always reminds me, like if I'm in a customer service situation or I'm doing a training, touch my ear, and people know that means evaluate, ask, and respond. We have to evaluate, and that's why the lifeguard is the best example. We have to watch and observe and listen before we act. So before we jump in, we need to know what we're jumping into. And Sarah, clearly during this pandemic, customer service has been a hot button issue. It's been really difficult. People are coming to this pandemic from different belief systems, different information systems. And we really have to, when we do our customer service, our customer service workers are on the front line and we don't know what's coming at us. So we've got to take the time to evaluate, ask the question, and really listen, not talk or think what we're going to say next, but actually listen. And then our response comes in. And so that's why the lifeguard really epitomizes everything that we need to be doing. And with the events in our country, we know that listening and observing is extremely important in any time, but especially in all of these crazy times that we're living in. Listening and observing is really everything.
Absolutely. I think it's funny that you call it ear because everyone says when you react to something too fast, they call it a knee jerk. It's instead of using your knee, use your ears, which is
so good. I didn't even think of that. That's awesome, Sarah. You're right. No more knee jerk reactions. It also can get you into trouble. And we know, especially in the workplace, we want all of our employees to love working at the company. But unless we're asking inquisitive questions about what's going on and spending one-on-one time, we've got to spend one-on-one time. And I always say, especially when we've trained over 1,000 companies and a lot of corporations, startups, hospitals, hotels, everything, every industry. And people will say, well, I just want my people to get along. And I want leaders to know, Sarah and I have just developed an inquisitive leadership coaching. So we're really excited to share that with you guys because we know as leaders, your boss is telling you something to do, your employees are telling you something to do, and you can feel extremely caught in the middle. And you really just want people to get along and get the job done. So our coaching helps you with that. And what it is it's using these inquisitive questions to help find out information and to get the team to work together. This is what creates high performance cultures. So Sarah's going to be releasing that in our MailChimp that goes out, and we'll also share it on social media. But inquisitive leadership is what's really needed right now. And Sarah, I know you feel the same way. We meet people, and whether you're leading a team or even in your own family, your own personal life, we really need people who are the lifeguards in our lives at this time.
Absolutely. I know a lot of personal relationships have been sacrificed at those knee-jerk reactions rather than stepping back and really evaluating before you continue, because you might think it's a long pause in a conversation, but that could be the make or break of a relationship in business or in life right now. Everything's very sensitive.
That's well said. Like you said, it is very sensitive because I know in the new year, because this is our January podcast, everyone in the new year's like, let's meet, we've got to get together. And it's kind of like that January 1, everybody's, ready to get back and, starting to have meetings. And you can feel extremely overwhelmed in the first 2 weeks of January because you just came off of, even if you didn't get that much vacation, you got a little time off with the holidays, and then you come back and it's boom. And that's why, Sarah, I like the word pause that you used. Sometimes it's very important in a make or break situation and relationship is to understand why that pause is happening and really reading body language so you can see where people don't feel comfortable. So let's go back to that example. That vice president who kept getting asked, why are you late for work? And it was, 4 or 5 times the answer was, oh, it won't happen again. Oh, nothing, it's okay. Let's start the meeting. And they never got to the core of the problem. Can you imagine this man not wanting to leave his wife and his newborn baby who was born severely premature, and waiting for doctors to call? That's so stressful every morning. But it was handled because it was an inquisitive question that was asked. So we have to really understand why people move the way they do. What are they operating on? What are they believing that's making them move that way? And I think he honestly thought, this vice president, that they would fix it and he wouldn't have to tell anybody. But at what cost? I mean, what if they didn't have that monitor and the baby was having trouble and they couldn't tell because they didn't have the right technology? So that question, again, bonded a company and an employee to a level that I can't even explain. It's honestly amazing.
Yeah.
And he really is a lifeguard for that company now. And the company was a lifeguard for him and his family.
Yeah, when you look out for your employees and vice versa, they'll get your back. And that's one of the most important things, I think, as an employer to remember, is that your employees go out and people, what's the first question you get asked? What do you do for a living? Where do you work? And if you have a great thing to say, it can change a total dynamic on how someone views a company versus how they can view it as something else.
And they will believe what someone else says to them more than going to your website and seeing all of the good stuff. So it's the questions and the one-on-one time that matters very, very much. And Sarah is really good at that. Over the years working with her starting as an intern and now being our chief creative officer and lead officer on social media, over the years, I've asked her, what do you think? What do you think of the direction of the company? Where are we going? And Sarah, I've seen you grow into an incredible listener, and you're very much solutions oriented. But I love it because it's always 360 solutions. It's not just one solution. It's here are the options. And for everyone listening, whatever you're going through, create options. I mean, I literally take a piece of paper, I write down all the options. I do not make a choice until I've looked at all of my options. Then I create an optimal solution. Sometimes you have to have hard conversations with people. Think it through before you have that conversation. Could it be you just need an inquisitive question that will then let the person you're talking to open up and find out what's happening? That helps with our emotions, and it also helps with our health. When people get in these big debates and, you can see it on social media and you think, man, somebody's blood pressure is through the roof right now. I mean, you think about our health. Is that good for us? To have to feel like every time we go into work, it's just surviving a battle every day, when it could be different. So that's why we like to come in, Sarah and I and the trainers, we like to come into your company and listen and observe. We want you to tell us what's going on and what you need help with. And then let's together build the culture through fun and interactive training. So if you don't like the culture, why would you stick with it? Because it could be hurting your health. And as well, it could be causing loss of productivity. So we work with high performance cultures by building them. We don't walk in and they're just there for us. That would be easy. But it's really finding out what is happening and also using the right questions. So I just want to comment on one piece, Sarah. A lot of people are saying right now, we just need kindness. And I agree. I think we do need kindness and we do need to be respectful with each other. But you're going to bond with someone and have a deeper connection when you've taken the time to listen and observe them and understand what makes them tick. Then you're building a connection. So for everybody who's listening, those are the connections that you want. And you can't just get them by being nice. They're not just going to happen. You might get the introduction because of that, but the inquisitive question and really again, the word inquisitive sometimes connotates bad things to people. It's really listening and observing. Inquisitive questions are based on listening and observing, but they are questions like we asked that vice president. What's preventing you from making it to work on time, and how can I help? Awesome. That builds a bond. So if I'm just nice to the guy and he's late every day and I'm like, oh, I'll just be nice, he's still going to be late every day. And in that case, it could have impacted his daughter's health. So we ask you to listen and observe. That's what being inquisitive really means.
Yeah, and I think I agree with a lot of people when they say we need more kindness. I feel like we kind of lost a bit of our own humanity in that way, just in like the most recent events. By sitting back and listening and observing, I feel as though I'm able to really see where those people are coming from. And I'm able to even see the person on social media who is getting into a fight. I'm not just sitting there eating popcorn. I'm sitting there really trying to understand where they're coming from and trying to understand both sides of the story before even thinking, like even before thinking about typing on a keyboard to comment. It's, to me, it's sitting back and evaluating, because you don't know what other people are going through, especially right now, but just in general. If you were to just be nice to the person who's always late and they're always constantly stressed out, I can't imagine how valued they would not feel as an employee. If you're constantly going and your back's up against the wall and you feel when you come to work that you can't talk to anybody, it's harder to go to work in the morning. So being nice, I think, is an element to being inquisitive, because inquisitive, I agree, can have a bad connotation, but it's not confronting the problem. It's like comforting a problem.
Oh, I love listening to you. You're so wise. And I want to tell you, I like what you're saying, because one of the things that made me think of is our unconscious bias training. We have biases. We hate that. And let's just talk about weight bias as an example. We know that we see something, and if we think a thought about it, we don't want it coming out of our mouth. You got to stop it. You got to listen and observe. I wish we didn't have biases. I know they're wrong. And when we teach unconscious bias, we say, think it through, give it a 360. So before you judge that person who's on a bus with you and their kids are running around like crazy maniacs, and you want to say, hey, get a hold of your kids. There's an old story about a man who his kids were going crazy, jumping on people in a bus. And a person looked at him and said, get control of your kids. And he goes, I'd love to, but my wife just died and we just left the hospital. Now you know his story. I mean, so you could have bias and judgment looking at him, but until you listen and observe, and, again, it could be asking an inquisitive question, again, offering your help. We also have to protect ourselves. Listening and observing really helps us with that. Before we jump into a situation that we think we can be helpful, we need to be sure we can be helpful. And I think everyone that's listening to this or watching this would agree. We should not always be the person who jumps in. We should be the person who listens and observes and then has more information before we respond. So I'm really glad that we talked about that, Sarah, because the unconscious bias training is something we've been doing so much. And for all industries, we all have them, but we don't have to react on them. We have to listen and observe. And in an inquisitive culture, that's what we do. Same thing for team meetings. One of the things Sarah and I talked about to have ready for you guys for this podcast, a lot of you would say you hate your team meetings. You hate going to team meetings. You feel like if you ask a question, you're just made, kind of embarrassed. Or if you have an idea, all of a sudden you're in charge of that work. And so people just don't say anything in team meetings. And what happens is if meetings are inquisitive, and we're going to be spending time in the spring about inquisitive meetings. Inquisitive meetings have more to do with a pre-work that's sent to everyone. Everyone responds, and then it comes back, all the results anonymously. Everyone gets a chance to look at the results and then create solutions. People want to create solutions. That's why they took the job. They want to be a part of that. That builds Lifeguard's brand ambassadors for your company, people who feel they're included. Now, We know that an inquisitive meeting is asking questions, but it's also preparing for the meeting and not wasting people's time. Your valuable workers want to be a part of the solution. And yes, all workers are valuable, but if you don't know them well enough to know what they want to do and what they want to be a part of, hey, I've been guilty of it. When I was a young manager, I was getting promoted, and I thought that the person who reported to me, her name was Allison, I thought she would love to have my job. I was like, because I'm getting promoted, right? So of course she'd want my job. And I told her, oh, it's a great job. You'll love it. You'll love it. I didn't take the time to listen and observe. She hated my old job. It was not good for her. She didn't like it. She was good at it, but she didn't like it. So I was so focused on, well, I'm getting promoted. You know, how would she not want my job? Of course she'd want it. I didn't listen and observe. That's not what she wanted to do for the company. That wasn't her next step. So by listening and observing, I would have been able to help her grow into the right job that she wanted, the way in which she wanted to work for the company. So we can't assume just because we like something that everybody else likes it. And that's why inquisitive meetings, inquisitive one-on-ones, inquisitive teams build high performance cultures, because they're listening and observing to what people want to do.
That's an awesome story. Sometimes you don't even realize it when you're so focused in your lane, or even I remember.
I feel bad. I mean, I felt bad because we got together, and I remember Allison and I went to a restaurant or something, had lunch, and she was miserable. And I said, is it the job? And she goes, yeah. And I said, well, you're doing a great job, because I was her boss still. And she said, I hate it. And I said, thanks for telling me. And so we were then able to get her to where she wanted to be in the company. But it was, it was my fault. I just thought, wow, she'll be great at my job. And of course she wants it, because I loved it. But that didn't mean anybody else would love it. So I needed to listen and observe.
I think that shows great accountability as you as a person, Katherine, is that everyone's made mistakes and you've learned from it. I mean, it's okay to address that we've goofed up before, but the idea behind it is to just move forward and be progressive with your ideas and just evaluate and evolve another person, even if it means taking them out of the position you thought they might have liked and then they didn't. So yeah. I like that idea that, like, not everyone's perfect. We've all goofed up, but the important part is that it got resolved. It got fixed, and you guys got to move forward. Awesome. I know from one of your previous speeches, I wrote down a quote, and I thought it would be the perfect way to end this kind of topic this month. And it was, what if the world listened more, observed more, and judged less? What would that look like? And I wrote it down in chicken scratch in the middle of Katherine's speech on Zoom. And I just thought it was so insightful, because it made me sit back and really, like, all I could do is think about, like, your head's always in the clouds because you always think what if, but it's crazy to think that that's obtainable, achievable. Like, it is possible with the right steps. And it was one of those quotes that I thought just sat so well, because, like, it's like classic Katherine. You're like, yes, 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 wait. So, but I thought that was a great quote. Just listen more, observe more, but don't judge don't judge as harsh. Don't knee jerk. Listen with your ears, not your knees,
Yeah.
And I love it. So I think it's great.
And thanks for capturing it, because when you sent it to me, I was like, I say these things, I put them in my speech, but I do think it is a good quote, because I do want our listeners to think about this. If we judged less and we did listen more and we observed more, what would our world be like? So it is powerful, because again, we know that when we have judged, we've made very, very big mistakes, if we're all being honest. And that's one of the fun things about doing trainings with us at Miracle Resources. We talk about that. Like, I give you my confessions. We spend time when you want to talk, because let's face it, in a team training, not everybody wants to be the speaker. Not everybody wants to talk a lot. So we do activities, but we also do individual work. So it really works for whatever learning style you have and how comfortable you feel. But if we don't have those conversations, like Sarah, what you brought up, and it is a great way to end today's podcast and video. If you think back to the times you judged and you were wrong and how detrimental that was, and then when you didn't listen, like you half listened, or you didn't observe something, you didn't see the other side of it, they're life changing, they're world changing. So I'm really glad that we're going to share that quote, and Sarah's designs are beautiful. So she's going to come up with some great design, and we'll share it with all of you. Also want to remind our audience, we do have the Inquisitive Leadership Coaching coming up. Sarah's going to be releasing that one as well. We have all of our offerings are on miracleresources.com. So as Sarah always says, don't feel alone. Don't go it alone. We're here to help. We will listen. You can vent, and we're going to help you with any of our products. I mean, any way that we can, but first and always we'll listen and observe. So thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks so much. I think this is a great way to start off 2021, is to start evaluating and find your lifeguard, because we don't know what's going to happen. So
we're ready to go to the beach, though.
Yes,
like when you look behind me, we are ready. That's for sure. We want to be able to be safe when we do it, though.
Absolutely. But thank you guys for listening this month. We'll catch you back next month.
Thank you.
Hey everybody, it's Sarah from the podcast. If you'd like to submit your stories, you can send them to km@miracleresources.com with the subject line Inquisitive Your Miracle Resource. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any struggling workplace problems, you will remain completely anonymous, and in the stories all the names will change. We'd love to hear from you, and we will see you back here next month. Bye!